What's the future of Sparklet Wars? Upland has just said that now after round 3, they're going to take an honest look and see how to improve this game. How can Upland make Sparklet Wars sustainable, fair, and inclusive at every level of play? I'm going to offer my 5 suggestions on how this can be improved. Sparklet Wars is a Layer 1 collaborative tower defense game where the goal is for your faction to earn the most points through strategic building, structure decoration, and asset placement. In each of its first 3 seasons, the war was dominated by the Cypher Cyborgs, and for their complete domination, any player who was on all 3 winning seasons is going to get this special badge. Their wins were well deserved as their teamwork, collaboration, and data analysis really put them in a position to do exactly what I think Sparklet Wars was meant to do, and have them collaborate, coordinate, and dominate the competition. Upland just released an announcement titled Sparklet Wars Recap, Honest Lessons, and a Look Forward. Due to this complete domination, they realize that they do need to make some changes in order to make the game a little bit more fair. They go on to say that Upland is committed to building a platform that can scale, something millions of players can access, enjoy, and compete in. To do that, Sparklet Wars needs to be more than innovative. It needs to be sustainable, fair, and inclusive at every level of play. I'm YK2012, founder of the Upland Guide. I'm here to unlock the secrets of the Upland metaverse. On this channel, you can find everything you need to build your Upland empire. Expert tutorials, winning strategies, pro tips and tricks, and a lot more. Hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to stay ahead of the game. Remember, knowledge is power, and in the Upland metaverse, that knowledge is truly your most valuable asset. I think one of the things that we saw is that players who have very large accounts are able to dominate and control the purchase of a lot of these assets, and they often have a large number of properties in the city where the war is taking place for them to be able to build up their towers, defend them, and attack their opponents. Upland goes on to talk about the tension that exists during these games, where it's not just a game, but it's also a way for players to make money. They say that at its core, Sparklet Wars is about strategy, collaboration, and long-term effort. But in a Web3 context, every action takes on added weight. Your assets matter. Your time is tied to value, and that creates a high-stakes environment where gameplay decisions double as economic ones. That sounds exciting, and it is, but it also adds a layer of tension that traditional games don't face. I'm not much of a gamer, but if you do look at things like Lego, shoes, trading cards, and even wine, you can see that there are people who do enjoy it, but there are people who have turned that into a business, making money, trading Legos, collecting wines. You've got people buying shoes for the sole intention of flipping them. So I don't see much of a difference between those industries and what's happening within Upland and Sparklet Wars. Is that a good thing? No. But is this something uniquely specific to Upland and Sparklet Wars? Again, no. This is going to be the reality moving forward, not just in Sparklet Wars, but all of Upland, and it's a matter of finding the balance. So what are 5 things that I would address in order to improve Sparklet Wars in the future? Number 1, I would address how Upland sells the passes. When you buy a faction pass, it's completely randomized, so you don't know what you're going to get. There are players who have heavily invested in previous wars, and they feel like they must continue to be on the same faction because they've collected a number of assets that they're going to be able to utilize in this next game. These players are more likely the hardcore players who have larger accounts, and they're able and willing to spend the money in order to be on the faction that they want to be on. I like the idea of the passes being randomized, but I think that there could be a premium tier of passes where maybe Upland could sell a limited number of passes for a premium price so that players who want to make sure that they're on that faction can go and spend that. Additionally, they might sell a yearly pass. If you know that you want to dive deep into Sparklet Wars throughout the entire year, they might sell an entire yearly pass for a specific faction that they could also sell at a premium. Personally, Sparklet Wars doesn't really appeal to me as a player, but as the Upland Guide, I do participate in absolutely everything in order to create content and explain everything that has to do with Upland. That's the reason why I participated in the very first Sparklet Wars. But after that, I just purchased a pass in order to sell it to make a couple of dollars. Having these passes where you're guaranteed to be on the faction that you want would likely push players like myself out of Sparklet Wars entirely so that only people who want to participate will participate. Number 2, and this is also related to passes, I would create a beginner pass that would have limited abilities. I don't really know what those limited abilities would be, but if I'm a brand new player and I only have 1 or 2 properties in that city, I may not have a lot of spark. I believe that it would be more difficult for one of those types of players to fully enjoy everything that Sparklet Wars has to offer. Number 3, When we look at the way that the points are distributed, you only get points for placing a structure ornament on one of your structures. If I buy one of the Sparklet Warz bundles and I don't get one of these structure ornaments, and I maybe only have some cannons or chests in order to attack and defend, then I have no ability to actually get points in the Sparklet Warz. I think Upland needs to address this and provide points for all aspects of participating in Sparklet Warz. Maybe attacking and defending don't provide you a lot of points, but there has to be some incentive to do that. Number 4, and I've talked about this before as a previous suggestion that I had made. When you look at a property like this and a superstructure here, it's completely protected just based on the fact that this property is absolutely massive. At over 1,000 up squared, there's nothing that any player can do in order to attack this property. Not only can this suck out all of the fun of the game, also when you look at several cities that do in general have larger properties, it makes it a lot more difficult to engage with your enemy. There isn't much strategy around finding the biggest property you have and putting a structure right in the middle where it can't be attacked. There has to be a scoring system that normalizes the score based on the size of your property. You can watch the video specifically about this idea in more detail in the link in the upper right-hand corner. Number 5, similarly to the previous point of how I talked about normalizing the number of points that you get based on the size of the property, we also have to look at the number of properties that someone would have in the city. If we take a look here in Los Angeles, you can see here that I own about half of this entire block. You can appreciate that if I was playing Sparklet Warz here, I might look to focus on putting structure ornaments here to get points because I don't have a lot of people with the ability to attack me. Now, there are even players who would own more of an entire street or an entire section, so this might not even be the very best example. But you can appreciate the strategy required in order to gain points in Sparklet Warz the way it is right now in this area is extremely easy. Having said that, let's say I'm a new player and I only own this one property here, the one that has the structure. There are lots of opportunities for players around him to attack him. So for him to gain points here is going to be a lot more difficult than for me to gain points in this entire block here. I think this really sucks out a lot of the strategy from Upland. And in order for Upland to be able to reward the strategy required for this player to get the maximum number of points from his structure ornament versus me getting the maximum number of points from the structure ornaments that I place on my property is extremely different. In order to reward strategy, I think that Upland needs to also normalize the number of points based on the number of properties or the number of Sparklet Warz assets that you're using within this round. If I have a dozen chests that I would place on this property in order to defend it from anyone else who's attacking it, is that necessarily the most strategic use of those cannons? Does it provide the best effectiveness? Maybe I've just got a ton of chests and I don't know what to do with them, so I'm just going to pile them up here in order to defend it. But strategically, is that the right thing to do? With the final rewards given to the winning factions in Sparklet Warz, Upland is incentivizing strategy within the faction. But within that faction, I think that this is another way to incentivize individual strategy. Let me know what you think of my ideas. If you have your own, you can drop your feedback to Upland in this link over here, which is listed in the description below. And if you like my ideas, make sure to tag Upland and tell them to check out this video.